Hello and welcome to Normal Islands Live. I'm Curtis Daly. I hope you've been well with the heat ramping up again. I've actually got my fan on. I hope you can't hear the fan in the background because it's so hot. It gets really hot under the lights. And I'm sure you've all had your government notification on your phone. I tell you what, it scared the living piss out of me. I was setting up the lights and I heard this burp, burp, and I was like, what have I done? So we've got the emergency message from the government. Apparently that's enough. You know, they've dealt with climate change now. But tonight, I'm really excited to be joined by Harry Eccles. Harry, how have you dealt with the heat wave this time around?
I'm very fortunate that I live near the sea, which is helpful. But in terms of traveling around and being on trains, I think like all the rest of us with a bit of kind of sarcastic resentment and doing the best we can. But yeah, it's hot, and the garden's parched. Like everything is just dry, crisp, and it's yeah, just really looking forward to rain. Can you remember rain?
Oh, I can. It rains, I think, like 2 weeks ago. For like an hour, it was like really heavy rain. And I was looking at it, I was thinking, oh my God, this is amazing.
What's this?
I
Yeah.
watched a video of
What do we
rain on
do?
Twitter and I really thought, oh my God, this is brilliant. Watching rain on Twitter, this is not okay. My city is also famous now because of Hyde Park. The field is just yellow. Usually it's luscious green. So we're going to be talking a lot about climate change. Of course, it's been an issue for decades, hasn't it? But it's getting worse. Now, of course, anyone who's watching, please remember to like the stream. Make sure you're subscribed. And if you want us to grow, then you can support us by going to turnleftmedia.co.uk/support to help fund our work. Coming up on tonight's show, we'll be talking about the by-election in Clacton, of course, Andy Burnham's weak attitude towards climate change with an interview from Amira Campbell from Green New Deal Rising, and British taxpayers funding therapy for IDF soldiers. Also, you can become, I didn't mention earlier, you can become a YouTube member for 99p. Like the stream, hit subscribe, hit the notification bell, share our stuff. Even if you can't give us any money, talk about us, share our content, social media, word of mouth. It all helps. Let's get on with the show. On to our first story. It's bin day. Nigel Farage has won the Clacton by-election, as all of us have expected, of course. But it was the amount of votes that Count Binface won, which makes this day an embarrassment for Farage. So as you can see, Reform won 62.8%. That's plus 16.6% from the 2024 general election. Of course, they've increased their vote share partly because other parties haven't run. But look at that. Count Binface with 26.7%. Now that is over a quarter of the votes in Clacton. Now, this was Farage's reaction after the win.
Have you won?
Yes.
You have won.
Yeah, very convincingly. I've managed to beat the establishment candidate.
You haven't yet seen off the threat of an inquiry into this gift you had from a crypto billionaire. What's the point of all this?
Who cares? Who cares? The voters of Clacton don't care. Look, Labour, Lib Dem and Conservative canvassers have been out for Binface. You know, they're not going to win. The Uniparty aren't going to win. They will not call a second by-election here. They'd be stupid to do so.
Who cares? Who cares? I don't know, Nigel, maybe millions of people across the country who are worried about the fact that you've taken £5 million from a crypto billionaire, okay? Not declaring that aside, even if you declared it, you've still taken money from a uber wealthy person. Because guess what, Farage? You are bought. You do not have the interest of the working class of this country. You have the interest of the oligarchy. That's the point. And Farage claiming he beat the establishment. I mean, come on, what are you talking about? He beat the establishment by defeating a bin. Now, the ex-Tory who went to private school became a city banker who spent time, multiple times actually, with Donald Trump, was given free gifts from a criminal aristocrat, £5 million from a crypto billionaire, Christopher Harbin, who Farage himself also is worth millions, is the anti-establishment candidate, and a parody joke candidate is the elite. He also said in that clip that we beat the Uniparty. He's now throwing in Count Binface as part of the Uniparty. We also have a clip of the loser. This is what Binface said to Sky News.
Well, he calls you the establishment candidate. He said in the last half hour or so, at some party he's having with his supporters, that he's beaten the establishment candidate. I assume he means you.
Well, that's interesting, isn't it? Because one of the candidates was a sitting MP, formerly an MEP, architect of Brexit, one of the most significant British politicians of the last 20 years, and reputedly a member of the East India Gentlemen's Club, which to this day does not admit women. Now, if that's not the establishment, I'd like to know what is, because I'm a lone wolf space warrior.
You went to Oxford University, though, didn't you? That's a bit posh.
I've parked above it in my spaceship, but I don't know what you mean. I mean, I'll tell you what, I haven't plagiarised any research. How about them apples?
Now, despite losing the election, Binface has released a victory speech.
Hello, humans. Well, a new dawn has broken, has it not? Literally, because it's past 6:30 in the morning here in Clacton-on-Sea. And I can officially say that I am the winning candidate of the candidates who bothered to turn up for the results. That's right, 9,455 actual votes. Just 8 weeks ago in Makerfield, I got 95. That means I've got against Nigel Farage 10,000% more votes than I got against Andy Burnham. What does that tell you? Well, it tells you that Nigel, who said that he didn't want to be humiliated, maybe has been. As for me, I'm over the moon, I'm over your moon, I'm over my moons, and what comes next, well, we shall see. But you know what? We know this for a fact. Over 1 in 4 people in this constituency would rather have Count Binface as their MP than the leader of Reform UK. And I'm just getting started. So where do we go now? Well, the first thing you have to consider is I promised to be a local champion for Clacton people, and I thought the best thing I could do was to turn up and get my verdict from Clacton's people and to stand with the other candidates who all behaved themselves impeccably until after the result. But yes, that was my view. And of course, the next question is what happens after this? Well, we will find out. Stay tuned for part 2 of the Clacton by-election, coming soon to a leisure centre near you as soon as that parliamentary inquiry reports. Bring it on.
I just love the fact that he lost the election and he's doing a victory speech. Gotta love it. You've got to admire the confidence. And I'm sure Binface winning 9,000 votes has been an honour for him. Get it? Has been an honour for him. I write my own scripts. I'm here all week. Sorry, I couldn't help myself. Reform cultists seem to be acting completely normal over the course of this by-election. GB News contributor Adam Brooks tweeted this. The truth is, the other parties didn't put candidates up against Nigel Farage in Clacton because they get annihilated. You can spin that any way you want, but it's a fact. It's a fact. I mean, that's right. You know, other parties didn't stand in Clacton through fear of losing. It's not like there's never been an election where certain parties stand with no hope of winning. Unless, I know, it's literally all of the time. I mean, if we are to believe that it's because they lose, then you would see all parties stand down across the country. They didn't stand because they didn't want to legitimise a bogus election, which is exactly what this is. And because Farage is an MP once again, the parliamentary standards will continue their investigation into his undeclared £5 million donation, which will most likely lead to another by-election, which all parties will stand. But this is the same Adam Brooks who literally accused those parties of being traitors because some activists supported Binface. So Brooks tweeted after it was revealed that some activists from the Lib Dems, Labour, the Tories and the Greens campaigned for Binface. The establishment will do anything to stop Nigel Farage. I'm disgusted at these people. They clearly don't care if the people of Clacton have a left-wing joker as MP. Traitors! Yes, they are literal traitors to this nation because they didn't back your preferred candidate in Farage. I mean, that is literally democracy. That's how democracy works, right? You have people who campaign for someone if they don't want someone else winning. but Brooks doesn't see it that way. But the election has become even more of a joke. Farage didn't even attend the count.
I regret to say, and by the way, I'm not scared of these people, far from it. But I'm damned if I'm going to stand on a stage having won a resounding victory, a ringing endorsement of all that I've tried to fight for and you try to fight for, and be demeaned and humiliated by nobodies. And I will not, sadly, be attending the count, which means I'm going to be here all night.
I feel sorry for those. I'm gonna be here all night. Oh, Christ. Good luck. But in other words, Farage is scared of a bin. But by not attending the count, he further delegitimized the contest. He then said that he was contacted by Essex police, that there may be a campaign to disrupt.
And I'm sad to say that after 33 years of being a candidate in active politics, I've been advised tonight by Essex police that there is an organised campaign to disrupt and degrade the result that will take place in a few hours' time. And once again, it shows you the sheer intolerance, the sheer loss of fundamental democratic principles that those that went before us fought in world wars to fight for and preserve. And this shows you why the battle that we're engaged upon in this great party, in this great movement of ours, is to get this country back to the values that it needs to be.
An organised campaign to disrupt and degrade the results is not a security issue. There's no reason not to attend a count, because some people might turn up who don't like him. Now, Essex police have confirmed that they didn't advise Farage not to attend. Essex police has not advised any candidate to not attend the Clacton by-election count. The force said in a statement, "We have a proportionate and robust policing operation to ensure the safety and security of all participants in the count." It comes after Nigel Farage announced that he will not be attending because the force informed him of an organised campaign to disrupt and degrade the results, and he did not want to be demeaned and humiliated by nobodies. A spokesperson for the party had also claimed there was a credible threat against him. So let me get this straight. Farage made his own decision not to go because the police told him that there might be some campaigners who are going to be there. Okay? If you want to be Prime Minister, by the way, you're going to have to deal with the fact that there are going to be people, protesters, that don't like you. All right? This screams snowflakery. Very fragile. Then a spokesperson for Reform twisted it into a threat against him. To be clear, the police did not advise Farage to not attend. Well, Reform MP Lee Anderson was caught out when trying to make it sound like there was a credible threat against Farage on the BBC in a car crash interview.
Is it true that Mr. Farage was notified, as he said he was, by Essex police of a security threat?
Well, Nigel said during his speech, he said he'd been told not to turn up because there could have been, a bit of bother there within, inside the county and all. So he's took the advice, and I think he's done the right thing. And like I say, Charlie, I think his time is better spent saying a massive thank you to the hundreds of people, the thousands of people that's turned up over the past month to help him secure this historic victory.
Understood. Essex police, BBC understands, say they didn't advise anyone not to attend.
Yeah. Well, sometimes some of these police forces that we've been dealing with recently are about as honest as you lot at the BBC.
Okay, so you're saying that Essex police, that they're not telling it how it is when they say that there was no advice to your party leader not to attend?
I've not spoken to Nigel about this. I've not spoken to Essex Police. If Nigel gets up on stage and says that he's been advised not to attend the event, then I believe Nigel above the police and especially above you lot at the BBC.
He's literally calling the police liars. And of course, Lee Anderson there, literally saying he was advised not to go and took that advice. Again, to make it clear, the Essex Police said there might be some rabble-rousing. That's it. Just a heads up, but don't worry, security is tight in these sorts of by-elections in the count. And Farage wanted to make himself as a victim and said, I can't go. Okay. But Lee Anderson is lying. He's saying he was advised not to go. That's not true. And he was caught out live on the BBC. And his response was, well, actually, I put Nigel Farage above the police. I believe Farage above the police. Now, it gets worse for Reform. This is what Deputy Leader Richard Tice claims: the police are the enemy.
Just finally, Nigel didn't turn up at the count. He didn't turn up at the declaration because he said that there was questions around security. Essex police say there were no incidents or issues at the by-election on Thursday or overnight. Where's the truth in this? Because the returning officer said there was no issues with security. The police say there were no issues with security. So what does Nigel know that they didn't?
Nigel's security team are tasked with keeping him safe, secure and alive, and their assessment, taking everything into account, and taking into account, Nigel would love to have been at the count. He'd have loved to have received that good news and that result in person. There's no one who believes more in the propriety of that process, but ultimately, it's their job to keep him safe, and they assessed that they couldn't guarantee that. And of course, it's one of those regrettable facts of where we're at. You know, we have in recent weeks, tragically and horrifically, had one of our close friends, senior politician, murdered, and we've had the truth come out about an alleged firebombing in Nigel's home last year. So you will understand, and your viewers and listeners will understand, that we're very cautious about issues around safety and security for obvious reasons.
They surely would, and I guess their next assumption, their next question would be, will you share that evidence that Nigel's security team say they have with Essex Police?
Obviously not, because the whole point of having a security team who are carrying out intelligence from a variety of sources is that, you know, that has to be its own secure judgment. The last thing you do is give your enemies
wouldn't share information that you say is a credible threat against the leader of your party with the police force of Essex, the part of the country where he is the MP for. You're saying obviously not. You would not share.
With the greatest of respect, we're literally just 6 days from when the Metropolitan Police and the counter-terrorism have had to apologise for not properly investigating a serious incident at Nigel's home last year. So in the nicest possible way, I'm going to trust Nigel's security team more than I trust any police force or anybody else.
This is a deputy leader of a party that seeks to govern this country, to be in control of our institutions, and they've just called the police... Excuse me, let me start again. It's on here. This is a deputy leader of a party that seeks to govern this country, to be in control of our institutions, and they've just called the police the enemy. Okay, now this isn't me defending the police here. People rightly have grievances with the police, and they do act on occasion as enemies against the people, whether it's arresting people for holding up signs or protecting power and wealth. But a political party that is asking for your vote in a liberal democracy, just casually calling them enemies, and no media outrage. Could you imagine if Zach Polanski had said such a thing? You saw the uproar with the fucking retweets. Imagine the backlash if Zach claims the police were his enemy. I wonder if we'll see a letter from Essex Police condemning reform, just like Mark Rowley. Will they go on national TV and undermine a political figure? Will we see that? Will Tice get the Polanski treatment? I doubt it. To also claim that they wouldn't share the details of this so-called threat to the police proves they are full of shit. There's no threat. And if there was, even if you have problems with the police, you'd involve them, which shows the entire victim narrative as being a complete farce. Like, I have huge criticisms of the police. I know that ultimately they do protect power and wealth. They are institutionally racist and sexist. But if someone steals my phone, and knowing that it's incredibly unlikely that they're going to recover it or even bother to look, I'm still going to call the police. If a friend or family is attacked, I'm still going to call the police despite my skepticism. But they're trying to do this whole victim narrative. Let's rewind ourselves back when Jeremy Corbyn was leader. Jeremy Corbyn was punched in the head, okay? It was also plots of a terror attack in Finsbury Park. That's more that's ever happened to Farage. Farage, as we know, has not been subjected to a terrorist attack that we know, and he hasn't been punched in the head. He's faced milkshakes. So Corbyn has already faced worse. And what did Jeremy Corbyn do? Did he create an entire victim narrative? No, he didn't. Did he say that people want to kill the Labour Party? He didn't. And that's despite the fact that when he was leader, Joe Cox was murdered. Yet he didn't frame the entire debate about poor us or poor me, I'm such a victim. He stuck to policy, really. And that just shows you the difference between Nigel Farage and Jeremy Corbyn on principle. Now, it's just more whinging from reform, isn't it? I mean, they've become so addicted to it that they even do it when they win. Harry, what do you make of reform's behaviour? Instead of just celebrating their win, they've again created another victim narrative.
Yeah, it's quite impressive, isn't it? Like, I remember after Makerfield by-election, watching it going, oh, they're such sore losers. And it's really quite funny to see that they're even worse winners. And watching the interviews on TV going around today, you obviously showed the clips from Lee Anderson, from Richard Tice. This is not a party who's winning. This is a party who is on the ropes. They were furious. They were fuming. They were churlish. They were petulant. They're already loading their excuses as to why they won. And I think the whole thing is unraveling because this has been a really clear display for most people of what's going on. You know, it's Farage trying to Yankify and play Trump in British politics, and it's just not washing. And I think people are fed up. People have seen his house in Clacton that he did or didn't buy, or that his girlfriend mysteriously bought with the random 900,000 that she got from nowhere. They've seen all the money coming around to Posh George. They've seen all the kind of the tax avoidance that both Farage and Tice have done. And that's not even including the money from Chris Harborne. And I think when all those chickens coming home to roost, he pulls this stunt to try and say, you know, like Trump says, well, it doesn't matter, I was in the Epstein files, it doesn't matter, I do this, and this, I've got a mandate. And it's that yankification of politics. Well, that doesn't give you a mandate to break the law. It doesn't give you a mandate to cheat parliamentary standards. It doesn't give you a mandate to continually lie to people. And look at the very first thing that he did when he won the election was he boycotted Clacton. He lied about his reason why, and then he called everybody that was there nobodies. Now, let's clarify who was there. His fellow candidates, the people who work for Clacton Council running the service, and the volunteers who counted all the votes, and his own supporters, and he called them nobodies. And I just think the whole thing just reeks of like a party who doesn't quite know what they want, but they're not winning. And that's what they're not happy about, because the conversation is returning. Within like a few hours of him returning to Parliament, the Parliamentary Standards Committee resume their investigation, and he didn't get what he wanted. He wanted a fight against the big major parties. They boycotted it. He spent his summer raging against a bid, looking like an absolute loot. I mean, in American news this morning, it was like CNN called it what, hard right populist, you know, battles trash can. Like, the world are mocking him, and he knows that he's on the back foot here. So I think, yeah, I think the behaviour is ridiculous. I think being a sore winner is an even worse look than being a sore loser. And with regards to the security threats, this must be the most protected man on the planet. He's offered protection by Parliament. He's got £5 million from Chris Harborne to pay for his security. He's got that group of black shirt thugs that walk around with him wherever he goes. And he's still just using it as an excuse to get out of his very first duty, being re-elected to Clacton, which is to go to the count, to thank his fellow candidates, to thank the people who got him in there. And instead, he's gone to some privatised party that you call Farage Fest, which makes me sick a little bit just saying that phrase. So, yeah, I mean, the only good thing about his behaviour is that he's doing it live for everybody to see.
I think it's a really good point you made out, actually, about the activists and the volunteers that turned up to the count, right? I mean, no one gets paid to count votes. And they've taken their time to be part of a political process. And Nigel Farage not bothering to turn up is kind of a spit in their face, isn't it? I mean, he can say what he wants about the other candidates. He can say what he wants about a guy who's pretending to be a bin. But I think it's a really good point. Those that turned up who, you know, might even support his politics were there off their own back because they wanted to support the political process, and he's basically called them all a bunch of losers and don't really care about them. Do you think, though, that this sort of circus act of a by-election, which it is, has made reform look worse? Or do you think there are enough people that have sort of bought the myth that it's Farage versus the establishment?
I think, I mean, clearly in Clacton, the latter, like there were enough people who still voted for him, but you've got to look at like how that happened. This is one constituency out of 650. They pulled away their campaigners from the mayoral election for this. That's how badly they backfired. Now, Labour won that anyway, and Reform would say they were going to win it anyway, but they pulled their chances by pulling their candidates away. They have had some of their allies from America coming over to campaign. They've had all the big names out in Clacton. They even got Richard Tice back from Dubai for the weekend to go and campaign in Clacton. Like they put everything into it. And they won it there against no real candidates. But I think the problem is like this narrative that they're trying to land again. It's this yankification of British politics. Like his father was called Guy Justice Oscar Farage, who was a stockbroker who sent his son to Dulwich College, the most elite and one of the most prestigious, expensive private schools in the country, which is where Nigel Farage joined the Conservative Party, that he stayed a very active member in. He's been an MEP was an MEP for over 20 years. His pension alone from being an MEP is over 70 grand a year. Like this is a man who has made millions from the city, from being in the media and from politics. Like that is the establishment. He was privately educated. Look at all his fellow MPs, largely privately educated as well. They collectively avoid hundreds of thousands of pounds in tax. Nigel Farage has been caught having, money in tax havens. That's not what standard working class people do. I don't know many fellow nurses that hide their money in the Cayman Islands. Like he is so obviously the establishment that it's almost quite bold tactic to try and just be like, we don't care about the truth, we're going to bulldoze it through. And that's the Trump approach. And I guess that's the worry, isn't it? Like it landed in America, will it land here? And I guess we're in the process of figuring it out now. And I guess we'll see. I don't think a by-election is enough to test it on, because there's so many different factors. Like they poured thousands of pounds in, thousands of hours in to turning out that vote. And it was already considered a safe seat. But I guess that is the worry. And I guess it's the job of like working class socialists to actually prove what working class socialism is about, to show that actually recognise that yes, the labour movement has failed a bit, trade unions have failed a bit, we're not doing proper political education, we've dropped the ball on the equalities front, we've dropped the ball on so many things, and that is what is allowing this narrative, because working class white people in Britain who maybe are going to reform are right in the sense that they've been wronged and they've been ripped off and they've been forgotten. Where they're wrong is that is the fault, that the fault of immigrants or trans people or any of that. It is the exact fault of people like Nigel Farage and the billionaires who back him, the oil donors that keep reform, ticking over. It is all those billions of pounds. It is all those kind of rich, wealthy, elite political classes like Farage and his friends that are the ones that are taking advantage of them. And I think that's our duty really as people on the left, to kind of reclaim that narrative, ramp up our political education, and kind of take a bit of ownership and go, we've not been good enough, let's get better.
Yeah, it's great points there. On the thing about Anne Widdecombe, right? I mean, it's plausible for people in Reform to say, look, we are a targeted party because Anne Widdecombe was horrifically murdered, and she is a Reform member, or was a Reform member. But the thing is, the reason why I can subsequently acknowledge that Anne Widdecombe, again, who was brutally murdered, was a member of Reform, and also say that Reform are playing a victim narrative, is, again, I'll re-reference Jeremy Corbyn. Jo Cox was a Labour MP under Jeremy Corbyn. She was horrifically murdered by a far-right activist, far-right thug. And yet Jeremy Corbyn didn't turn around and then say the entire Labour Party has a specific victim complex and we are targeted more than everybody else. And I think it's when Nigel Farage and Richard Tice and others are using Anne Widdecombe's death to say that we are uniquely targeted. That means we can now undermine the police. That means I'm allowed to take millions of pounds from billionaires. And they're using her death to avoid scrutiny. So some people might be watching this if they're not left-wing. They might be right-wing, saying, how can you sit here and say that Nigel Farage is undergoing or creating a narrative of a victim complex when Anne Widdecombe, a Reform member, was literally just killed? This is crazy from you lefties. But again, I personally think that these two things can be true. A horrific thing can happen, and the victim is right-wing, but also the right-wing and the right-wing party can absolutely weaponize it and still create a victim narrative. I think you're right that Farage, in a way, is the most protected, or one of the most protected MPs, because if we're to believe that he uses that £5 million for security, well, he's got more money than anybody else as an MP to pay for security. I wonder if he's using that money for security. I'm not sure. I would love to continue this conversation, but it's already 8:10 and we're still on the first story. So we are going to have to swiftly move on. But I think your comments were brilliant and I agree with a lot of it. But let's go to our second story. More than 50 green activist groups have called on Andy Burnham to take a clear approach to the recent extreme weather Britain has faced this summer. Green New Deal Rising, Greenpeace, Friends of the Earth, among others, wrote a letter to the Prime Minister urging him to recognise the severity of climate change. On Wednesday, Burnham chaired an emergency Cobra meeting on the recent heat waves, yet didn't mention climate change once. His lack of communication on the climate catastrophe and the only policy announced in response to the heat is banning disposable barbecues have many questioning how serious he takes humanity's greatest threats. This, combined with the fact that Burnham announced that he will drill for oil in the North Sea, something that even Keir Starmer refused to do. Anna Martin, co-director of Green New Deal Rising, said, "Since becoming Prime Minister, Andy Burnham has not uttered the words climate change. It's barely believable as wildfires sweep the nation and drought sweeps across the country. If you can't name the problem, how will the British public trust you to come up with the solution?" As Mayor of Greater Manchester, he was clear that there should be no turning away from net zero. Where is his leadership on this issue now? But will Labour eventually take climate change seriously? Unlikely if MPs are taking money from oil companies. Back in 2024, it was revealed that the new intake of Labour MPs had taken £45,000 from the oil and gas industry. Earlier today, I spoke to Amira Campbell from Green New Deal Rising to talk about the lack of action from this Labour government. What do you think of Andy Burnham's government and his response to the recent heat waves?
I think for everybody, his response and this entire government, this administration's response has been incredibly disappointing. You know, in the heart of a heat wave, we've got Burnham signalling, you know, that he's going to drill into the North Sea, that he's going to open up for new licenses, etc., etc. Then we've got, in response to wildfires, he calls a Cobra meeting and then afterwards talks about banning disposable barbecues. And now we're 25 days into Burnham's administration, and it's taken him that long to even use the words climate change when we've seen degrees as high as 38 degrees across the UK. So we've got heat waves, we've got wildfires, we've got droughts, and we've got an administration that has, quite frankly, failed on the topic of challenging the climate crisis or responding to the climate emergency. And I think it's really disheartening because, you know, in other senses, we've got this conversation about social care around, you know, £2 bus fare caps, things that really will transform and improve working class people's lives. And then at the same time, this absolute lack of care around climate from a government that claims to be more progressive than the previous one. And I mean, now we've got a bit more movement, him talking about hosting the summit, you know, the re-emphasis of the importance of clean energy, the acceleration of the transition. These are the things that he's now saying today. But it does ask the question, too little, too late. And for the majority of young people and for the majority of working class people, we want to hear that Burnham cares about our futures and that he wants to do something around the climate crisis.
Let's unpack that with Andy Burnham, because Keir Starmer, and a lot of our viewers are highly critical of Keir Starmer, I am myself, but he committed to the 2024 Labour manifesto, which is to not drill in the North Sea. So Burnham is to the right of Keir Starmer when it comes to climate change. Of course, as you mentioned, when it comes to like domestic policy, such as like the bus fare cap, you can see he's pivoted to the left. But on climate change, he's gone to the right. I mean, what do you make of that?
I mean, I think he's trying to pander to an audience that are never going to vote for him. Fundamentally, we know that the majority of people moving to support Burnham, they belong on the left. A lot of them are Green Party voters, right, who care deeply about the climate crisis. So not only is it incredibly immoral, but it's also not the politically savvy move or the intelligent move for him right now when he's trying to build up so much support for the party. And it's really bizarre because I don't want to think that 25 days in, Andy Burnham's already in bed with big oil. That's baffling to me. But it really does look that way. Now, I do think it's too soon to tell. And I'm still holding on to the hope that Burnham is going to deliver for young people and for working people. But on climate, I think he absolutely is right of Starmer right now. And that's really, really concerning. At the end of the day, what we need to see Burnham do is commit to the things that are not only in the Labour 2024 manifesto, but also go further, right? It's not just about no new oil and gas. It's also about investing in the transition, accelerating the transition. It's also about investing in green jobs and green skills and training. Like, eventually we need to see a Green New Deal. We do need to move in that direction. We need climate and economic justice.
So Robert Palmer, Deputy Director of Uplift, he said that Burnham has a track record of talking about the importance of tackling climate change. Okay, this is in the past, especially when he was Manchester Mayor. So in your view, what do you think has changed since he's become Prime Minister?
What's so bizarre about the situation is that Burnham clearly understands the climate crisis well, right? In his role as Manchester Mayor, spoke about it very clearly, and was very adamant specifically around the transition. And in his appointment for Desnes of Miata, and obviously with Ed Miliband as well, there were some promising moves right at the very start of his administration. But I think fundamentally what we're seeing here is Burnham moving quite nervous as our new Prime Minister. He has the opportunity to, you know, as he used when Keir Starmer was rolling back on his pledge, he has the opportunity to stick to his guns around the climate crisis, around the climate emergency. And what we're seeing is that he's flailing about and actually refusing to offer clarity. I think what's changed is he's become Prime Minister. There are other forces pushing, lobbying him, and he's making it harder and harder for himself to choose working people over big oil and gas. But at the end of the day, it is a political decision. There are clear opportunities. I think he's moving back in the right direction. And so we have to continue to apply the pressure to make sure that Burnham makes the right call.
I think it's something interesting you said that, because a lot of people, and I think the media helps this, buy into this narrative that it's working people versus the climate. You know, you hear Richard Tice and that sort would say net stupid zero, it's bad for the economy, it's costing working people more. Obviously, you're from Green New Deal Rising, okay? The part of your campaign name is New Deal. Okay, there's jobs in there, there's an economic analysis there. What would you say to people who think that looking after the planet, dealing with climate change is somehow directly in conflict with improving the material conditions of the working class?
I mean, I think it's really important that we give really tangible examples around this. Like right now, the conversation or the exploration around Jackdaw. If we were to open Jackdaw, we're expecting 27 jobs for working people. Meanwhile, we know that there are 400,000 critical jobs in energy security around like green and clean energy. We know that there are opportunities around nature restoration. We know that there are opportunities around emergency services that are struggling in the face of heat waves, wildfires, but also what will come in the winter time. And so we know there are all of these climate jobs that we need to put people in. We know that there's a clear economic argument for moving for the Green New Deal. And so what's actually happening here is that in this conversation, often about, you know, trying to defend jobs that people currently have, right? And it is nuanced, it is complex, but often in this conversation, instead of prioritizing, how do we actually make sure that working people can have access to good quality lives, good, secure, meaningful work going forward, we end up in this place where we're sort of battling between working people and the climate. And it's just not an accurate depiction of what's going on. There is an opportunity to actually go, do you know what? We're not going to keep furthering this narrative that has been going on for years and years. Let's be really honest about it. Burnham has the opportunity to turn around and go, we're not going to continue with this narrative. And actually, we know that we can provide secure, meaningful work for working class people in the clean transition, and through that also offer an opportunity for their children and their grandchildren to actually have a future on this planet. And so it's completely against the rights of working class people to not do something about the climate crisis.
Now, a lot of us are doubtful that this Labour government is willing to make those necessary changes to do our bit to fight climate change. I mean, you have Labour MPs who have taken tens of thousands of pounds from the fossil fuel industry. Okay, clearly a direct conflict there. Do you think there is a hope for change under a Burnham government?
I remain ever the optimist, always in these things. I think that probably comes across the whole way through this interview. But I think it's about creating the conditions in which there isn't a choice, right? I'm not about us waiting for government to make the right decisions around the climate crisis. We need to create the conditions in which they have no other option but to do so. That means increasing pressure. That means organising. That means making it completely irrefutable that the public fundamentally want to see a just transition. And we're getting there. We really, really are. But I think at the end of the day, we've got a government that will be responsive to how the public respond. And so we need to keep applying the pressure. I think within a Burnham administration, there's the opportunity for climate change to be taken seriously if the pressure is there.
What measures would you like to see immediately from Burnham to signal to you that he will take climate change seriously?
I mean, the first thing he needs to do is come out clear and bold and say that he will not be opening up the North Sea for drilling. That's the number one thing that Burnham needs to do. But second to that is then a real investment, ideally around, climate jobs, infrastructure, skills, training. We need to see mass investment into this transition, and we need to see the acceleration of this transition. And those will be the things that signal for most people that Burnham is taking the climate crisis seriously.
That was Amira Campbell from Green New Deal Rising, speaking to me earlier today. Before we continue, I do have some breaking news. British academic Jason Arday has been found dead at an address in Battersea. The Met Police say officers were called by the London Ambulance Service at 3:12 p.m. today, where Arday was found unresponsive before later being pronounced dead. Quote, sadly, a 41-year-old man was pronounced dead at the scene. His next of kin have been informed and are being supported by officers. At this time, his death is being treated as unexpected, but is not believed to be suspicious. The case is being investigated by officers from the Met's Central South Command unit. A file will be prepared for the coroner. And because we know absolutely nothing about this story, it's just happening, we're not going to talk about this any further. But I wanted to bring the breaking news that he has been found dead. Let's push on with the current story. Now, since the recording of the interview with Amira Campbell, we have an update. Andy Burnham made a statement on last night's fires in Stourbridge.
It's clear that the climate is changing. Everybody can see that, and we have to react accordingly. So I will convene in the summer, at the end of the summer, I should say, a summit with fire and rescue services to make sure they are properly resourced going forwards. We've lost firefighters in recent years. I know it as a former mayor from a very grassroots level, some of the pressures on our fire and rescue services. I can't say today that we've done enough to fully resource them to deal with these type of incidents, and I want our firefighters to know that I understand how it seems from their point of view, and I'm going to convene that summit to make sure we get in place the right support, including the aerial support permanently, if that is what they deem is needed. Obviously there's other adjustments that we need to make in relation to climate change. We might be in for a wet autumn and winter straight after this because of El Nino and some of the issues there, which was reported to Cobra. So after fire could come floods. So we have to face up to the changing climate, and I think we need a different debate about that. There's no point denying where we are. We need to face up to it. We need more clean energy. We need to see that transition accelerate. Those are all of the issues that are now in discussion, but the Cobra meeting earlier this week I think has enabled us to mobilise resource today to individuals, to communities and to our fire and rescue services, and we're very, very grateful to them.
Anna Martin, co-director of Green New Deal Rising, responded to Burnham's comments. Finally, Andy Burnham has said the words climate change as Prime Minister and acknowledged the cause of the wildfires, drought and extreme heat that is raging across the country. Now he's acknowledged the problem, he needs to make sure his policies deal with the scale of the issue. That means saying no to new drilling for oil and gas in the North Sea. We can't burn more fossil fuels if we want to limit the worst effects of climate change. It also means ramping up new investment in renewable energy and climate jobs, doubling down on insulating homes and improving public transport, and making sure our homes, hospitals, schools and emergency services are properly equipped to deal with extreme weather caused by climate change. Harry, given the updates, Burnham has finally mentioned climate change. Do you think this government will finally see sense and make the necessary changes?
No. In a word, I think he's finally mentioned it when literally half of Britain is literally on fire. And I think you can't really claim to be serious about climate change whilst you're flirting with new oil licenses. And I think, like, you know, Amira summed it up really well. And actually, you've got to look at some of the options that he could have before him if he wanted to do it. He could nationalise water and invest in reservoirs and infrastructure. He could invest in green new energy. He could completely rule out new oil licenses, but he's not. And Amira raised the point of, well, that's not politically popular. So if something's not politically popular, why is someone doing it? Well, they're doing it because that's what powerful people want them to do. That's lobbying. That's the only rational reason for somebody like Andy Burnham to be still keeping new oil licenses on the table. And I think the thing about climate change is it's complex. And there's a reason why we have climate scientists. It's not for blokes down the pub to figure out what they reckon based on the summer that they remember 30 years ago, or the fact that it rained somewhere else and it's cold somewhere else. We're seeing like crops failing in Britain. We're seeing drought. Some of the biggest trees with the deepest roots around here are starting to suffer. They look poorly. They look like they might die. This is quite extreme. We're a relatively protected nation. We're a wealthy nation, and we'll manage this for a year. We'll manage it for a couple of years. Will we manage it for much longer? And we've also got to think about those people more vulnerable around the world, the ones that, you know, our right-wing government would be the first to cry if they tried to move away and come somewhere else looking for safer places because they've been driven out by climate change. And I think you don't respond to a crisis slowly if you're serious about it. And I think it has been slow. And I think, to be honest, the only reason that they're mentioning the words climate change is because of the work of people on the left, because of the work of people like Zach Polanski, who are keeping it at the forefront and centre, rather than the media trying to like brush it under the carpet so they can focus on granting new oil licenses. And I think the fact that the only outcome of a Cobra meeting with the UK's best and brightest is to possibly ban disposable barbecues that we all now know because we got scared shitless by the alarm that went off on our phones earlier, which is important. It's not a solution to climate change.
Yeah, no, I don't think that this government is going to do anything about it, especially when you've got Labour MPs taking money from the fossil fuel industry. It's coming to 8:30, so we are going to move on. But before we do, you're not going to say 2026, and we want this year to be big for Turn Left. We want to be more ambitious than last year and to really put us on the map. We would like 2026 to be the year where we can have a studio. We have a part-time studio, but hopefully full-time, and for our contributors to be paid for the work we do. Your support over the years has been amazing, and we are ready to take this to the next level. We rely on small donations, so if you want to be part of a media organisation that seeks to destroy the oligarchs, then please head over to turnleftmedia.co.uk/supports. There you can support us monthly on Patreon, or there is another link for a one-time contribution. You can also become a YouTube member for 99p. Let's go into our final story. A truly viral development from this government exposed by Declassified UK reveals that British taxpayers are funding therapy for IDF soldiers. British taxpayers funded therapeutic healing for Israeli soldiers who fought in Gaza. An Israeli organisation received the undisclosed sum via a UK charity, with 25% gift aid added on by the British government. Emails obtained by Declassified show how the Yahalom Foundation, an Israeli veterans group, tells British soldiers to channel their donations via its registered partner platform in the UK. Processing your donation through them ensures you receive full tax recognition and enabled gift aid, maximising the impact of your contribution. It says 100% of your gift is routed directly to Yahalom to support our core mission. The Yahalom Foundation directs British supporters to a list of fundraising projects for Israel Defense Forces veterans, claiming that donations would be eligible for the tax subsidy. The list includes funding a £5,000 therapeutic healing journey for soldiers returning from Gaza, as well as individual psychological treatments. I am truly sickened. Truly sickened. Not only is the British state complicit in a genocide where babies are sniped in the heads by occupant Israeli forces in Gaza, we are now paying for therapy for these monsters. I don't want therapy for these people. I want them to suffer the crimes they committed. I don't want them to forget a single face of the people they slaughtered. I want these people to have nightmares for the rest of their lives. That's the least that can happen because they're not going to be held to account. But morality aside, why are we? Why is the British state subsidising anything for a foreign army? We have British people being arrested for holding signs, potentially facing 14 years in prison to protect a foreign genocidal regime. For all of the rhetoric from the right wing who accuse everything of being treacherous, standing with Israel over the British people is treacherous. Harry, I struggle to put into words how angry I am. You can hear how angry I am. What do you make of this development?
It's one of those things where everything feels on its head, and it's quite hard to know where to start, isn't it? I think the fact that I work as a nurse with work with veterans in this country, they wouldn't have access to those sorts of therapies and that sort of help. And I think you've got to remember that the context that the British government is making, the choices it's making, it's choosing to prescribe organisations that are trying to actively stop genocide. It's arresting pensioners in the street for peacefully protesting against genocide, whilst allowing those who continue to sell the arms and profit from the arms. And I guess to also further fund, like you say, a foreign army that isn't like a defensive force, that is an occupational force committing some of the most heinous war crimes that we've ever seen, and consistently documented live streamed war crimes. It's hard to kind of put into words, and I think it cuts to the heart of the matter of what is going on at a point where it is against everyone's ethical instinct. It is against the whole country is watching this going, why are we doing this? We do not want to support this in any way. We don't want to send weapons. We don't want to send charity services to support the people who've perpetrated the genocide, and at the same time complaining about the support for Palestinians. Like, it just makes no sense. We should be quite ashamed of ourselves, to be honest. And I think it really goes to show how a government is so intent on going against not only the will of the British people, but against just the most basic understanding of morality and ethics in the situation by consistently picking the wrong side in what can only be described as the worst, most heinous act of evil on this planet, which is a genocide.
I do want to bring up a comment. I know we haven't got to the comment section yet, but I want to respond to this. Let me go back and find it because I started. From Rebecca saying, I'm sorry, but wanting someone to suffer is immoral. I get it. I get what you're saying, right? Maybe this makes me an asshole. But to be honest, and I'm not saying that everyone who was forced into the IDF, because obviously it's conscription, although you do have a choice, go to fucking jail for a few years, because I wouldn't do it. But I'm reserving my views towards those who have committed war crimes, specifically the heinous ones, okay? We have reports where Palestinians were raped by dogs in prison. We have one report where a Palestinian was raped by a knife. We've had multiple reports where babies were deliberately sniped in the head. We have a genocide that's happening. We have malnourishment and people are suffering. It's not just mass killing, it's mass deliberate suffering where these people, the Palestinians, aren't dying a quick death. They're dying a slow death. And all of this is by design. So I apologize in advance if I come across as an asshole. But yes, I do want those people to suffer. And why do I want these people to suffer? It's because they won't be held to account. Now, in a just world, Rather than these people facing internal suffering, I want them to be arrested. I want them to be held against the law. But international law does not exist. Israel and the IDF can get away with whatever they want. So in lieu of that, just something, I do think these people should be having nightmares for what they've done. And I don't think the British taxpayer should be paying for therapy. That's my view. And if you don't like it, I apologize. And if it makes me an arsehole, fine. But to me, genocide is the greatest crime in humanity. I think it's a good time to get to our comments. Let's bring in our producer, Ben. How are you?
Hello. All right, let's get into it. Obviously, we do have a lot of comments. I think it's appropriate, first of all, to bring up one from Michael, who did say, "My guess is Len McBain is producing."
We haven't seen Len McBain. Where is he? Where is Len McBain actually?
Yeah, the Len McBain account has sort of disappeared. I don't know whose account it is. It's going to reappear now because I've said it. It's like
if it's going to reappear now, then I think you are actually behind Len McBain.
Well, I can't do both. I haven't got enough hands to do both. I can either do the comments or Len McBain. I can't do both. But then if it doesn't appear, it looks like I'm Len McBain, so I can't win. Right, let's go through and let's go through the donos first of all.
Do you mind if I? Sorry, I'm so sorry. Do you mind if I quickly respond to one more, and then I will leave this? Is that okay?
Hold on. Could you just start it a second? Because
okay, I'll start. I want to get back to that comment.
Don't mind. Yeah, I absolutely want to be a part of that conversation because I think it's a very interesting conversation. Leo gave £5 and said, "So the climate emergency is bad enough to jump scare the whole country, but not enough to implement anything against corporate interests." I don't know if you guys want to jump in on that one. It's sort of been the theme of the show. Yep.
Well, he fucking did scare the shit out of me. Well, to be fair though, like I saw Rupert Lowe attacking it, and he was like, "Oh my god, he sent an alert to not start fire." Obviously, and I'm like, yes, obviously that's again like not a radical policy to deal with climate change, but I still think it's like that's correct for the government to do. They should be putting out alerts, right? And they should be scaring people because the threat is real. So I'm not going to criticize the government for putting out an alert, even though I literally shat myself. But we all agree they should go further.
If that's the only thing you do, if that's the only thing that you do, I think it's because they did a Cobra meeting. They came out with the idea to ban barbecues. Everyone was like, "That's ridiculous." And they were like, "Oh, we need to sound more serious. Let's put this on an alert." And I think, yes, that's fine in a suite of other things. But the people they should be alerting are the people on private jets, the people drilling for oil, and the people that are tearing up the planet for their own profit. That's whose phone should be going off and scaring the shit out of them, not ours.
True.
That's a very true
also,
point.
As part of Turn Left's PR, I do have to point out that when Curtis says literally shat himself, he does not mean literally. Just to point that out.
Otherwise, we would have been late on the show. We were
a bit late
starting. Okay. And funnily enough, the first comment that I was going to bring up is from Leo as well. It is someone better keep a fire extinguisher near Nigel because his pants could start another wildfire, which I thought was a good combination of the first and second stories. Really is. Flow Snake, friend of the show, said that Farage just comes across as bitter, weak, cowardly, and actually a bit tired these days. Totally lost his mojo IMO. Here for it. What do you guys think about the impact this is likely to have on Nigel Farage and his public image?
It's hard to say, isn't it? I mean, before this by-election, there was speculation about him using this as an opportunity to step aside and using other things. And actually, he looked tired and he started to lose his rag a few times on interviews before the by-election. And to the point where Farage has always been trusted as the figurehead. And he was just starting to look so, weak and bitter. And he just looks like he'd given up the fight. He was getting angry and churlish and showing that side of him that he tried so hard to keep away. But then obviously he stood again and won again and the party have got behind him. But he looks bitter, weak and cowardly, probably, I think, because he's bitter, weak and cowardly would be my summation of it. But yeah, I think it is starting to show.
Yeah, and I don't think people like whingers. I don't think people like always playing the victim. Woe is me. And I think it's so strange because reform in 2024, or specifically 25, it felt like they had a really good strategy. It felt like Zia Youssef professionalised the party, did some really good things to get them to 30% in the polls. Yet it's not like they've had a change of strategy. Well, they have a change of strategy. It's not they've changed the guard or changed people and it's gone downhill. Like Zia Yusuf has gone from a professional guy to a crackpot. The shit he says lately is so weird, and I don't know what's happened. I mean, I seem to think that they've enjoyed the smell of their own farts too much. That they're like, anything we can say, people are going to love it. And they've thrown maybe caution out the window, and they've come across as really, really radical. And they haven't had 30% in the polls. We've covered this before. They've not hit 30% in the polls since March. Some polling January, some February, some March. Like they're on average 24, 25%. And on average are behind Labour now. So they've really, really fucked it. And I think the behaviour reform after this election, after winning, but not winning, they're not seeming to, they don't understand that people don't like that.
Yeah. Speaking of whingers who are falling below the average, Jarrah said during Lee Anderson's interview, "Oh, Lee, come off."
Oh, Lee,
I did want to comment on the Lee Anderson interview because one of the things that frustrated me was how I think the interviewer's name, the BBC interviewer's name is Charlie. How like Charlie was so obviously trying to give the day to Lee Anderson, and Lee Anderson was like, "Nope, you're the enemy. You're the enemy." And even when it was sort of handed to him, even when he was like, "Oh, we're not liars like you are at the BBC," Charlie was still like, "No, actually, we're on your side, mate." By basically going like, "Oh, so what you're saying is," and then put it in much more polite terms. And it's sort of like, whitewashing, idea laundering through the BBC or presentation laundering through the BBC. And one of the things I was thinking is, like, why is the BBC and so much of our media frightened of trap questions? Like, call him a fucking liar. Or even better, say to him, well, obviously either your leader, Nigel Farage, is a liar or the police are liars. Someone here is a liar. Let's use the L word, Mr. Anderson. Which one is it? Are you going to say that Essex police are lying? Or are you going to say that Nigel Farage is lying? Who's the liar? Put them in it. Make them say it out loud. It just frustrates me when I see politicians being interviewed like that. Do you guys want to comment specifically on the Anderson's performance there? I don't know if you wanted to give that a look.
Just, if the BBC are trying to polish his statements, there's a saying about you can't remember quite what it is, but you certainly can't polish Lee Anderson any more than you could polish a turd. I think it's this point, isn't it? Like we know that in the media now, access is privilege and Farage sells, and I think they need to get over that. And it's felt like there has been a turn. That's why as soon as the slightest bit of scrutiny from the media came, this whole Farage facade kicked off, right? That's what started it, the slightest bit of scrutiny, and it all started to come tumbling down. And the fact is, when you put these people under any pressure, they buckle, because that's the thing about the establishment. They're used to being protected and upheld, and they're not used to having that pressure, and they just turn on each other as quick as anything. Because not only have you had Zia Yusuf becoming absolutely like inexplainable on social media and radicalized by himself through X's own algorithm, you've also got these, Suella Braverman just pretending she was never a Tory, and Robert Jenner, and then turning on each other in these arguments from just last year, where they're calling each other traitors and those sorts of things, and pretending they haven't happened. These are people who ultimately are in it for themselves, and their only collective shared interest is power and money. And given enough scrutiny, they'll just tear each other apart.
Absolutely.
But Lee Anderson is obviously popular with his local constituency. He's jumped 3 different parties and keeps winning. And I don't understand how he's so popular, because he comes across really as a massive arsehole. I'm going to be honest here. I think there's many politicians who their political views really anger me, but as a person, they don't really offend me. Most of the politicians come across as briefcase, right? But Lee Anderson specifically really has like a nasty streak about him. Like, I think he's a genuinely nasty person. The way he talks about people, the way he just carries himself, I think he's quite a vile person. And he comes across as just a complete idiot, like that BBC interview. He didn't come across as smart. I don't know how he's so popular. Your point about the BBC, though, why don't they ask cutthroat questions? I personally think it's because the institution of the BBC has always been about, we need to be quite respectful, and the BBC has changed over the years. But I think one thing that's drilled into journalist there is, I was all about being balanced and respectful, which it become, you know, it's a hindrance in a lot of ways, because that means you're not free to really go after people and hold people to account. So I think that's kind of why you'll see, you know, journalists who leave the mainstream media who are far more effective. I forget his name now. He just recently joined Zateo. He was an ITV journalist. And of course he worked for the mainstream media. Since he's left since he's left and joined Zateo, incredibly impressive. Very impressive.
I think on the whole, like, they're trying to be both respectful and balanced. I think part of the problem is, though, when somebody calls you a liar, when the person you're interviewing calls you a liar, you can either at that point be respectful or balanced. You can't sort of be both. You have to go on the hunt. So I see what you're saying. It's like it creates a core contradiction in their sort of like understanding of balance. It's something I've spoken about to Sangeeta Maiska with, both on a panel recently and last year.
Well, I mean, I also think as well that they do have to make sure that they don't lose trust from the people, because I think like trust in the BBC has obviously gone down, but I think if they come across as overly aggressive, it might seem polarizing to people. Thank God I didn't work for the BBC and Turn Left have that independence. Well, we can be like that. But I'm just thinking maybe that's their sort of
self-perpetuating
understanding of it.
The more they act defensively to try and not look like, oh, we're the establishment attacking reform, the more reform have grown and grown and grown.
Yes.
And it's actually like that it's not strategic. It's clearly not working, right? It's like Labour chasing the right-wing vote. It's just not working. So what's happening? And I think it's that old saying, isn't it? Like, if someone says it's raining and someone says it's not, your job as a journalist isn't to say it's somewhere in the middle. It's to go outside, open the window, stick your hand out and go, actually, it is raining. And I think because people are losing faith in journalism because they're not calling it out when it's obvious. So I think it's actually strategically poor as well, because people look at that and go, he's clearly being an idiot there. Whatever you think of him, like, just call that out and just say, well, you know, you're calling us liars, calling them liars. It's Trumpian. It's nonsense. And the state of political discourse in this country is deteriorating, and they're responsible for it. So yeah, I think it's a bit self-defeating.
Yeah, I think I absolutely despise, in the interest of balance, it's objective reporting. That's what we do here. We are objectively, we have a bias. We're called fucking Turn Left, right? A media for socialism. We are obviously biased, but we are still objective. And the frustrating thing, Harry, is, you know, you hit the nail on the head, is that there's a temerity from the mainstream media to give credence to something that's objectively wrong. Like, no one ever in the mainstream media should ever platform a climate denier, because you can't say, well, we need to be balanced. No, you need to be objective. You need to be climate denialists should never ever be platformed anywhere. I also think people kicking off with the comments, please keep it camaraderie in the comments. There's no hate towards anyone in the comments. Please just keep it chill.
I know what you mean with regards to objective, but it's more, for me, it's more like the people almost aren't willing to be subjective enough and make a subjective argument. It isn't just saying, well, this is my opinion and therefore I don't have to back it up, right? Saying something is subjectively true, saying this is how we view the world, is actually what we do, I think, quite well here at Turn Left, is that we say, here's what we believe and here's our reasons for believing it. And so much of the mainstream media is basically like, well, here's an opinion from one side of Parliament and here's an opinion from another side of Parliament, and we're not going to get involved, we're not going to comment, we're not going to try and inject any sort of like any of our own sort of understanding of it. We're not going to check whether it's raining, so to speak, to put it in the terms that Harry was putting earlier. But I 100% agree. We should probably keep moving. Jacqueline said, don't forget the abuse that Diane Abbott has gone through on a daily basis for decades with regards to security. And Nigel Farage saying that he's the most abused or the most threatened MP, or whatever he said. I think that's worth just highlighting, because I think Jacqueline's absolutely right. I'm sure we all agree on that. But moving on to the second story, I can't pronounce the name now. Keller Dunphy said, seriously, we're getting excited by the PM just saying the words climate change now. Is it just me, or is that a low bar? No, you're absolutely correct. That is a very low bar. I won't even worry too much about about that. That's the only comment I put for the second story. But there were more comments, but I've just undone them because we've been running so over. What else did we want to... we should probably spend some time on the third story, because I think that's one that's caused some controversy. Is that what people are arguing about in the comments as well? Is that what's
yes. But it's good to... I think it's really good. I want to quickly preface this, by the way. I'm not angry at anyone in the comments. Rebecca, I'm not angry at you. I actually think it's really good to have these discussions, and maybe I'm wrong on this, and it's good that we've got viewers holding me and others to account. So I think it's... Just want to be clear. I'm angry at fucking the situation, but this is only respect to everyone who's watching.
Yeah, we'll get onto that in a second. I just want to say a couple of Burks piped in and said, "Oh, they got sad soldiers, so they do have souls." I'll always like to highlight a couple of Burks.
Go support a couple of Burks as well. Go subscribe to them.
Absolutely, great channel. And Actual Intrepid said, "I'll pay for their incarceration for war crimes, not therapy." And Leo made a very good point and said, when Sex Matters is the transphobic hate group Sex Matters is eligible for gift aid and charity status, I literally cannot be surprised by the Charity Commission allowing this as well. Private schools as well, right? They get tax breaks, which is wild. Absolutely wild. But we should probably get onto the discussion about is it valid in these circumstances? Because obviously Rebecca said, "I'm sorry, but wanting someone to suffer is immoral." And please follow your ethics to their logical conclusion. Is it useful to have traumatized veterans in society? If you want to inflict suffering, you think an eye for an eye is appropriate. I actually have I want to inject something here. I actually do think it's a bit nuanced. Some of these stories are about 22-year-olds. Now, I consider a 22-year-old to be they are basically a child. And many of them have been shipped off to war, fed propaganda their entire lives. You're never too smart to fall for propaganda. Nobody, if their entire world is being controlled around them, nobody is too smart to fall for propaganda. It's just that there is nobody alive who's too smart to fall for propaganda. And there is this curious thing with veterans of all wars and all war crimes where they occupy the status of both victim and perpetrator. They're victims of the regime, not to the same extent and not to the same category as the Palestinians, of course, but there is a sort of victimhood to a lot of these very young people being propagandized by their government and then shipped off to war and put in harm's way. We're talking about young people at the end of the day.
Well, I specifically started that comment because I wanted to clarify something, because I'm not advocating an eye for an eye. If I was advocating an eye for an eye, then I would be calling for the soldiers to be killed and their sons and daughters to be slaughtered, or them to be physically harmed or anything like that. That's not what I'm calling for. That is what an eye for an eye would be, right? To inflict upon them what they've done to other people. What I'm saying is, in the absence of any legal proceedings and these people being held to account, at the least, I want them to be with their own thoughts and are dealing with the consequences of their actions. So that's when I say I want them to suffer, because when it comes, and I appreciate Rebecca did say she's a prison abolitionist, so that makes more sense to me and why she's coming that angle. I fully respect that. But if we were to think about prison, for example, it's both punishment and rehabilitation, right? Of course, I think the way in which UK prisons and American prisons have done it wrong, which is just focused on punishment. You've got European nations that are far less restrictive, and they participate in society better. I get that. But there is an element of punishment in prisons, right? Otherwise, we wouldn't be locking these people away. If there was no punishment, we would be saying, cut it out and that's it. So punishment is still part of the process. And, part of the reason why a lot of people don't advocate for the death penalty is they say it's too easy for some people. Some monsters who take the death penalty and that's it. Part of them is that they have to be in prison and live with their thoughts, because that's the natural justice. Human beings have created a structural justice, which is the justice system, but there's also a natural human justice, which is the feeling of guilt. That is something that we didn't invent. That is something that came about through evolution, and guilt is an important thing, right? We do something wrong, we feel guilty. That's a natural justice system. And if these soldiers, these RDF soldiers, don't have that feeling, right, then there's no natural justice occurring there. Now, again, in an ideal world, I'd much rather go the legal route. But in the absence of that, yes, I do think that they should be dealing with the consequences of their actions. They should be feeling immense guilt for what they have done. And that's why I don't think British taxpayers should be paying for therapy. And one could say, well, if you don't want us paying for therapy, then you're endorsing them feeling trauma because they're not seeking therapy. So that's what I mean by that. Not that I want to inflict physical harm on these people or an eye for an eye, because again, an eye for an eye, I'd be advocating for a lot worse. That's all I'm really saying. And again, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is my most conservative opinion. But that's how I feel. That is how I feel. And I'm disgusted by the genocide.
It's a complex one, isn't it? As a mental health nurse, obviously I treat patients who have from all sorts of backgrounds, and it's one of those things that you learn that actually humans end up in places, find themselves in places. We're all human beings, and I believe everyone deserves support and treatment. I guess the question that we're talking about is, why are we doing that therapy? What's it for? And I think like you say, guilt is a very human emotion. It can help us understand things that were wrong and help us learn from those mistakes, and that's super important. And I think there can be therapy to de-radicalize. There can be therapy to help people process when they've been victims of cults or radical extremism. And I think we would all agree that the IDF is the definition of radical extremism. Like, it's an ideological, hate-driven extreme ideology that is leading to genocide. And I guess the real question is about, prioritization of funding and why we're doing it. Israel isn't a poor country. Palestine is a poor country. And I think these are the things why it's complex, and obviously why emotions run high. And I think this is why the story cuts through, because it cuts to a lot of different things. And that's why it provokes lots of strong emotional reactions. And lots of those things are all quite true as well. Like, in an ideal world, could we stop the genocide, care for the people that are wounded and dying in Gaza, and provide therapy and de-radicalization for the IDF soldiers and all those things? Yes, of course, all those things would be great. But it is a complex issue. And I think all the opinions and understanding around it is right, and it's really hard to be rational about situations that are so overwhelmingly sad and overwhelmingly kind of just so against the humanity in all of us, and we could just see it and watch. So I think it's one of those spaces where it is helpful to talk about it. It's helpful to talk about it in a constructive way. And one of the problems with conversation these days is that you express an emotion strong, and that's kind of labeled as one side, and we push against, and we lose the nuance to recognize that we're all emotional beings. We do react emotionally, we also react rationally. Like, that's who we are. That's how we do, and we learn both things from both of those, right?
Yeah,
how it makes us feel, and then we think that through and talk about it. So it's helpful discussion.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I appreciate you coming out with some nuance as well. Everybody, I think, has started to come at it with some nuance, and that's good. Speaking of which, I did want to point out, Rebecca did also say, I'm viewing it as people with untreated PTSD / CPTSD in society element, and I think the negative impact of that is what she's saying, or they're saying. And I have CPTSD. I'm not a veteran though, so that is my bias. So as somebody who's like suffered with trauma, I think that I do sort of get where they're coming from. So I thought Specs Bean Farmer gave a pretty good response. Specs Bean Farmer, friend of the show. Said, I understand where you're coming from to Rebecca, but also they got their PTSD committing war crimes and should face justice for that. I think that's where most of us are coming from, and I think that's. I'm sure Rebecca would agree with that. And also, I did appreciate Rebecca saying, I'm really glad you are engaging, and I totally understand your reaction as well. I think we can probably close out there, because it's quite an interesting discussion. Apologies to all of those whose comments I didn't get around to, particularly you, Jim. I see you tagging me, trying to get the comments. I'm sorry. Sometimes we just don't have time to get around to all of them, but I do appreciate all of you.
Guess who's just popped in? It's you, isn't it, Ben? For the cheeky £5 super chat.
Hang on, I didn't see that. Hang on.
Just happening now. I'm not going to spoil it for you. You have to find it yourself.
Well, can you make me bring that up?
I'll find it. I'll bring it up. Oh, there you go.
Yes. Len McBain. Ben is not Len on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Honest. Don't put honest at the end because then it looks like me. It's like I couldn't have done that because I don't have £5 to send to my. Basically, if I did that, I'd be giving money to YouTube
yourself
ad revenue. And it would be giving it to YouTube, the YouTube gods, basically.
Yeah, because you wouldn't even be getting the £5 back because YouTube's got to take their cut. So it's like,
exactly.
Yeah, this is not money laundering of £5. Yeah, like that. That needs it.
Yes.
Jim speak forever. Sorry, Jim, we didn't get to any of your comments. I apologise. Blame Ben because he's in charge of the comments. Actually,
incredible.
Don't blame me.
I should also say we got a couple more super chats and stuff. Lobster received a gifted member from Ollie because Ollie gifted a Turn Left membership, and Jaris 8313 said, "Been a minute. Thanks, Curtis. What a day." And with that, I'll let you guys get in. It's yes, yeah, I think it is. Let's oh no, we're being framed again. Oh god. Okay, we get quite serious in our chat, and then all of a sudden, no one.
I know, right? It's Friday. It's Friday.
Yes, absolutely. But thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
You have been absolutely brilliant, and I will hand it back over to you to close out what's been a chaotic and long show. Yep, I'll see you guys later on. Thank you very much.
Ben, thank you so much. And of course, thank you to everyone who tuned in. Really, really enjoyed the discussion. Didn't expect it to go where it did. But as I said before, we are certainly not an echo chamber. I love it when there's points of disagreement, and we can always engage it in good faith. And I like the fact that people have different agreements. Call me out. I think it's great. I'm not going to be offended by doing it. In fact, we often bring up comments that we disagree with, even when right wingers come in the chat. So it's all love from me, and I really appreciate that you stuck around for those that did disagree with my takes. Harry, absolute pleasure. Fantastic guest tonight. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me. It's always nice to be invited back a second time. Then the first time went okay. But yeah, real pleasure.
Yes, exactly.
Great chat. Really enjoyed it. Thanks.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Of course, please remember that we go live every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 7:30 p.m. You've been watching Normal Ireland Live. I'm Curtis Daly. I'll see you next time.